have continued to get some really supportive and kind comments on my videos. Thank you for all of you for weighing in and telling me what you're thinking and what you're feeling and kind of baring your soul in public on social media, which I realize is kind of a risky and scary thing to do. Not everybody is a chronic oversharer like me. So let's talk about feelings for a minute. Feelings are something we aren't really taught how to deal with. I'm going to talk about some generalizations based on gender and socialization in the US. If you're from a different culture or this doesn't apply to you, bear with me. I can only talk about what my own experiences are. I was socialized as a girl and as a woman, and there were certain expectations of me growing up. I've always filled the peacemaker role in my family, so when people would fight or argue or have a disagreement, he would be upset for some reason, I would come in and try to resolve it. It led me to feel that I should put other people's needs above my own. I should put other people's feelings above my own. So for me, I was aware of my feelings, and I mean, you see me cry on my streams all the time, and I've never had problems with crying in public, but I've always struggled with feeling like if I'm upset about something or I don't like something, I have the right to talk about that and to expect a fair chance at having that change. Which is not to say that everything needs to 100% be what I want it to be, the way I want it to be. It doesn't mean that I need to get all of my wants met. But it does mean that I have the right to assert what I want and to have a chance of that happening. I deserve to speak up for my feelings and say that hurts me, that upsets me, that's not fair to me, and all of that's completely legitimate. And nobody came straight out and said to me, Lauren, you must not have feelings. That didn't happen. But I picked up on it, and this is why I talk about socialization. There's this expectation and this standard, and so you see kind of held up these ideal people who are the women who take care of people, moms who sacrifice everything for children, women who take care of everything in the home for their husband. And it was a really long journey to get to the point where I felt like I could say, I don't want this. And that's okay. I've had relationships with primarily really nice people, but there's frequently been a role that I've filled where if they are upset, I feel, and they subconsciously feel, that I should try to find a way to make things better. And this isn't to say that every woman ever is a perfect saint martyr, but there is that expectation. And that's kind of the role of women emotionally, is to make other people feel better. We feel selfish for asserting our needs. We feel selfish for saying, I don't like that. We feel selfish for thinking about ourselves. And I don't think that's fair. And I don't think that's healthy. Conversely, a lot of guys have commented to me that when they've thought about this sort of thing, that they don't really feel comfortable crying in front of people. They don't feel comfortable having conversations about how they feel, being scared or sad or excited with their male friends. And this is really sad to me because I feel like that's the foundation of friendship. And that's where we wind up sometimes with this imbalance of perceived friendship versus relationship interest between men and women, because women are socialized to share emotions, listen to other people's emotions, and kind of engage in an emotional conversation, and men aren't with other men. So when a woman talks about emotions with a man, she's just acting like she does with her other friends. But for men who've been socialized like this, that's not an activity that they engage in with friends. That's an activity that they engage in with partners. And so they start thinking that this is a romantic interaction that they're having. And that's really difficult for everybody involved. If you don't know what to do when you're sad and disappointed or upset, you're still going to have those feelings. They don't go away just because you don't have an outlet for them. any more than a woman's emotional needs go away just because she tries not to have them. We're human beings, and human beings are feeling creatures. That's just how it is. And I've heard people say to me repeatedly that they like watching my videos because I cry when I play sad games, and there's something cathartic about that because they can't cry. And that breaks my heart, because it's not that you don't have tear ducts, it's that you don't feel that you have the right to cry. You have been told, maybe nobody straight up said to you, maybe they did, but maybe nobody straight up said to you, you are not allowed to cry. Although I've been told that actually sometimes people do have that conversation when they're children. But regardless, you grew up with this idea that you aren't supposed to cry. That's not what a man does. That's not what a grown human does. Well, that's what people do. And if you don't cry, it doesn't mean you're not sad. And crying is super healthy. It actually literally does things to your body to deal with those emotions and help you process them. And so if you need to cry and you're holding that back, you're not giving yourself the physical relief that humans get when they cry. And when you're told that you can't cry and you can't open up and be vulnerable to other people, kind of what's left for you? You can be happy and you can be angry. And you kind of don't know that you have this whole range of other options. But you do. We all do. We just don't necessarily know what to do with them. There's a couple of ways you can deal with emotions. You can pretend you don't have them and put a lid on it and just don't acknowledge them, which is what women are told to do for their needs and what men are told to do with sadness and more complicated emotions that are viewed as vulnerable and feminine. You can just let your emotions all over the place. You can cry when you want to cry and yell when you're mad and dance when you're happy. As with most things in life, though, I think that there's a middle ground that we need to find. Being sad when you're sad and crying when you want to cry is fine, but you also shouldn't wallow in sadness to the point that you can't get up. Obviously, depression is depression and there's only so much you can do sometimes. But it's also important to set as your goal getting through that sadness and not letting it rule you. When you're super happy and having a great time, it feels so good. Sometimes you can get carried away. Sometimes you can make impulsive decisions and things like that. So I think it's important when you're overflowing with joy to just make sure you don't go off any cliffs. And when you're angry, a lot of times anger is justified and it comes from somewhere. But anger is like fire and it will burn everyone it touches. If you keep your anger bottled up inside, you're going to get really burned and eventually it's going to overflow and you're not going to be able to contain it forever. But if you send it flying out, you're going to burn everyone around you. I have really big emotions. I have a mood disorder that I have to take medication for to keep my emotions slightly more manageable. So when I'm happy, I'm really, really happy. And when I'm sad, I'm just despondent. And when I'm angry, it's this uncontrollable seeming fire. I have had to work really hard on my emotions. When I was a kid, they were all over the place. When I was really little, I bit people. I would get so angry, usually because somebody wasn't listening to me, somebody was taking things from me, genuinely upsetting things. I had a legitimate reason to be unhappy, and I had no other way of communicating that would get taken seriously. And so in my powerless and fear and rage, I bit people. This isn't actually a solution. For a 4-year-old, it's more understandable. For a grown woman, maybe not. And I've had to learn that my sadness and my happiness can both go to extremes that aren't healthy for me. And that whether that's wallowing in sadness or kind of going manic with energy and excitement, it's not a good place to be. For a few years, I tried really hard to quash all of that. I tried to hold myself to an impossible standard. And for me, the answer has kind of come in the past few years with this idea that my therapist introduced me to, which is tolerating your feelings, acknowledging them, sitting with them, not acting on them, but also not suppressing them, recognizing that you have a reason to feel the way you do. If you're angry, something probably happened. Maybe it's a misunderstanding, or maybe you are being unreasonable in your expectations. I don't know. But most of the time, anger has some legitimate cause. The problem isn't that you have the feelings, and you're not a bad person for having feelings, whether they tend toward anger or sadness. None of this makes you bad. It just makes you human. The one thing you can control is what you do with them. And that doesn't mean squashing them and getting rid of them. It doesn't mean pretending you don't have feelings, because it's not bad to have feelings. It is not bad to see something sad and cry. It is not bad to experience something and cry. You're a human being. That's why you have tear ducts, to cry. And it doesn't in any way diminish you as a person. And if you're angry, especially if you're a woman, you've probably got a reason to be angry. You don't have to bottle that up and feel that you're at fault for having those feelings. Like, I guess now that I think about it, it's kind of like women aren't supposed to be angry and men aren't supposed to be sad. And that sucks for everybody. Also, what does that mean about non-binary people? Are you just not supposed to have any emotion but happiness? I mean, I don't know. But we're all human beings and we all have a full range of emotion. Not everybody has emotions as gigantic and out of control as mine can be. But you've got these feelings and that's totally fine. In fact, that's wonderful. Because we feel these different feelings, we get to explore and enjoy the world. When we cry about something, it's because we care. And caring about things is one of the most beautiful things about human nature. I mean, I can't even think about my cat Knox without almost crying, you know? And that's not because something's wrong with me. That's because I loved her. And that's wonderful. You know? Like, how beautiful is that? That we can legitimately, genuinely care about some other living creature so much that it's devastating, that our body has to go through a process to handle the consequences of losing what we love. Like, that's beautiful. And learning to be angry is probably the most challenging of all of this, because you have to walk a fine line between giving into that fire and pushing it outwards and telling yourself you don't deserve to be angry and pulling it inwards. You have the right to be angry. You deserve to be angry sometimes. Ideally, you can express your anger in a way that doesn't really cause pain to yourself or other people as much as you can. The work that I've done on this has been to learn to identify, what are you feeling? Because sometimes you think you're angry and it's just that you're sad. You have to learn to identify what your emotions are before you know what to do with them. And I think asking yourself that question and really thinking about it, and maybe doing a little research on what the feelings are and what the signs are of these emotions, will help. Forgive yourself for having feelings. Forgive yourself for having emotions, even the ugly emotions, because you're human. That's all. You're human. You're allowed to have those feelings. And sure, you know, you're going to mess up. And sometimes you're going to lash out at people, or you're going to wallow in your sadness, or you're going to do something stupid when you're happy. And that's okay too. You will make mistakes. That's, again, just part of being human. And sometimes these feelings hurt you. Just having them. Being sad hurts. When I got divorced, it hurt so badly. It was terrible. It felt like it was tearing me up from the inside. And I asked my therapist, what can I do? How can I work on this? Because I'm a really proactive person. And I'm like, what kind of work can I do to make this pain stop? And she was just like, you're just going to have to get through it, Lauren. You can't stop it. You can try to put it in a box and put it aside, but eventually you're going to have to get through it. You can either do it now or you can do it later, but you have to do it. I could probably do an entire video on the experience of learning to sit with your unpleasant emotions and be okay with things hurting and be okay with things kind of sucking. And maybe I will do one of those. It's not easy to accept feelings that hurt. Nobody wants to be sad and nobody wants to be angry. But these feelings are going to happen no matter what we do. So we might as well learn to deal with them in a way that's healthy for you and healthy for the people around you. Accepting that you feel this way Accepting that sometimes it's just gonna suck and there's nothing you can do about that. And that's kind of the cost of being human, just like being sad at losing someone is the cost of loving them. So try to be aware of your feelings. Try to know what they are. Try to accept them for what they are. Try to sit with them. When something happens and you have a surge of emotion, don't put it in the box and don't lash out. Kind of take a deep breath. Assess the situation. Sometimes you have to get over that first wave of emotion, and then you can work on having a healthy response to things. Whether that's allowing yourself to cry because you realize I'm just being a human being and I care about this. Accepting and forgiving yourself for feeling sadness or feeling anger lets you be able to take a healthy step towards dealing with them. If you're trying to quash your sadness and quash your vulnerable feelings, something is going to give. And a lot of times that leads to people lashing out because they have this backlog of emotion in them that's got to do something and it's got to go somewhere. And if that's the only way that they feel like they're allowed to express themselves, that's where their emotions are going to go, and everybody gets hurt, and it's not a good thing. And if people are told that they can't be angry and they can't stand up for themselves and they can't ask for change, then they try to keep it all in and keep it all in. And eventually, like, it's like a pot that's like bubbling and bubbling and bubbling. Eventually, it's going to spill over. And if it spills over out of control, it's not going to be a moment that you want it to, and it's not going to be in a way that you want it to. So instead of letting it get so big and so bad that it has to express itself one way or another and it comes like exploding out, try to recognize the smaller emotions. Try to recognize things before it gets to that point. Speak up when there are small unfairnesses in your life, and you won't get so resentful that you explode. Accept when you're sad and vulnerable and let yourself feel those feelings, and you won't wind up emotionally hurting for so long that you lose control. You'll be better off if you can just learn to accept your emotions and work with them. Don't fight them, but don't be ruled by them either. And this is absolutely something that I'm still working on, and it will always be a work in progress. Everything I talk about here is just a work in progress. That's life. Let's talk about feelings, okay? I'm not a professional. I want to reiterate that. But these are things I've worked on with professionals, and these are the sort of things that you can read about on your own too if you want to do research. And I think these are conversations we need to be having because I think that everyone is being hurt by this. I look at people who are hurting, and I look at people who are hurting other people because they themselves are hurting. And it's just such a tragedy. And we can do something about it in our lives and in the lives of the people around us. We can set an example. We can have these conversations. If you're a man who's been socialized not to be vulnerable with your friends, try reaching out to them. Try getting past that barrier. Acknowledge it for what it is. Be like, hey man, I know that this is kind of weird, but something's going on in my life and I need to talk to a friend about it. Whatever you're struggling with, someone else is struggling with it too. You don't have to be alone with your feelings, and you don't have to be alone with your life. And it's not like it's suddenly going to be like, poof, wait, all of the socialization that has shaped you to have the difficulties you're having is gone. It's not an instant cure. You're not going to miraculously not struggle with this. But we can take it apart. If they're all around you, we can take it down brick by brick, and you don't have to do it alone. If you feel like you're a bad person because you get angry, forgive yourself. If you feel like you don't have the right to open up and be vulnerable to other people, give yourself permission to do that. We are all on this journey through life trying to do the best we can. And I think you'd be surprised by how well people understand what you're going through and how much I think everybody wants to be able to open up. I'm a really emotionally open person. That's just kind of how I am. And I talk to people who aren't like that themselves, but they open up to me because they want to have that opportunity to express themselves, and I give them a space to do it. And so from that, I've kind of learned that no, actually a lot of people want openness. They want vulnerability. They want to be able to share their emotions with other people. You can work on that. You can claim the right to do that, and you can create that space for yourself and for other people. I know this is probably going to sound dumb, but I think we can make the world a better place, and I think this is one of the ways that we can do it. Don't be afraid to tackle it. Let's try to build better relationships and set healthier boundaries and find a way to be a healthier, happier version of ourselves. And in case that was too serious, Purple Faces, thank you for watching.